So while I was working on my last video, responding to somebody who hates modular, I couldn't help but notice that there's a lot of myths about modular that are still out there. And so I thought, well, maybe I should cover some of these myths about modular and see if we can't debunk some of them. So without further ado, here is episode 1, Debunking the Myths of Modular. The first great myth about modular that I'd like to start discussing is the idea that once you've patched something up in modular, you can never go back to it again if you pull out the cables. In some cases, it's brand new users who've heard this in other places and are convinced that once they make a patch, they can never get those same sounds and functions out of their system again. But in other cases, users who've been around modular systems for a long time have come to believe that it's impossible for them to recreate the sounds and the functions of their modular once they pull it all apart. And quite frankly, this is completely untrue. Let's find out why. When I first started traveling with my modular, I noticed right away that there was no way I was going to be able to leave all the cables patched. Some of my patches used more than 100 cables in a tiny little tip-top Mantis case, so there was just no way to travel that way. So luckily, I had been using Modular Grid to design my case anyway, and Modular Grid makes it easy to add cables and then print it out. So typically what I'll do is once I've got the modular grid set up the way that I want it to be, and I've got my case looking the way that I want it to be, I'll start adding colored cables in modular grid and then print it out in layers. Here's some examples of the little manuals that I've put together that show me where to patch in all the cables and where all the mults go. On these same little diagrams, I'll make notes about where the controls need to be, and then right on the face of the modular case itself, I'll put little notes that are stuck to the modular case, and sometimes even pencil marks right next to the knobs or little tabs of tape so that I can get the knobs all back into the same position. I do it in layers because if I create a printout with that many cables on it, it's completely unreadable. Typically what I'll do is divide my patch into different sections. Like I might have voice sections, drum sections, bass sections, effects, sequencer, all kinds of different modulations going on. And then what I do is I draw up or use modular grid cables to cable each of those sections and then print it out on a separate sheet of paper. Even for my little Mantis case, I may end up with 4 to 6 pages of different layers of cables that I can then use to patch it up once I've got to my destination. And then finally, in order to make sure that I haven't made any mistakes, I'll usually do a test run while I'm still at home, pulling the cables apart slowly, making sure that I've got everything notated in the right place. And then once I've got the entire patch deconstructed, I'll time myself to see how long it takes to put it all together again and get it sounding exactly the same way. Typically, in my Mantis case, I can build up a big patch in about 2 hours, and that includes tuning it and getting everything running the way that it was running before I started patching. Although not many modular composers go to such great lengths to recreate their patches, most of them have much better memory than I do, I have met some other modular composers who are as diligent as I am when it comes to repatching. A composer by the name of Freaked Music from Utrecht in the Netherlands showed me a cool piece of software where he's able to notate all his own patches and then look at them right on his phone. He and I both agreed that for us as composers using modular gear, the patch is like a score. So we're using the construction of the patch in the same way that other composers might use the construction of notes on a piece of paper. So for us, it's critical that we be able to recreate the patches and have them sound in exactly the same way. Now, of course, that doesn't mean that there's nothing random going on. Most of my patches are semi-generative or entirely generative, and there's lots of random and chaotic things going on, but they're baked into the patch. So once I repatch everything and I get it up and running in the same way it was when I first designed it at home, it's doing all those random and chaotic things that I wanted in the first place. Now you can see, here's the original patch that I've got up and running in my studio in Western Canada. Before traveling, I disassemble the patch. I take all the cables that I need and a few extras, all the mults and everything that I need. I've got everything labeled. And then next up, we see the patch as I've recreated it in my hotel in Utrecht, Netherlands. And then we see the patch on display at a performance in Utrecht, Netherlands. And then eventually I travel with the patch right into the heart of Amsterdam. And here I've got the patch set up once again in Amsterdam. And I use it for more recordings. Then I disassemble the patch and travel over to London, get it set up again, use it for more recordings. And then eventually make my way back home to Canada with the same patch. It's important to note that I'm able to do this so accurately that if I want the patch to sound a little bit different, or if I'm trying to get a different sound or a different range of expression, I have to go in there and make changes to the settings and to the patch itself. I'm able to recreate these patches so accurately that they sound virtually identical to how I created them at home. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. Please like and subscribe, consider joining my Patreon to support my efforts, and we'll see you next time when we debunk another of the great myths of modular. Thanks so much, take care.